What is really happening? What does reality look like without embellishment? Global and domestic politics without fabricated stories.
Together with Mr. Petre Mamradze, we will present a review of current events in Georgia and around the world. Welcome, Mr. Petre. Congratulations on May 17th, albeit belatedly. This is the day of family purity and respect for parents. It is difficult to find a person in this country who does not honor this day, at least that's what I thought. However, I was bitterly mistaken because a certain portion of people came out and completely discredited this day. They said that it is an expression of homophobia. And I would like to introduce Irina Sarishvili's comment. This is a person who, imagine, practically participated in the entire national movement, and now, for her to make such statements is quite surprising to me. Irina Sarishvili states, Pelio Patriarch Shio thinks he is God, and an evil God at that, exactly the kind imagined by the aggressive, ruthless, and malicious part of his flock. Shio himself is evil. That is the kind of statement she's making. Salome Zurabishvili is making similar statements as well. It's nobody's business whether I get an abortion or an enema. Now tell me, Mr. Petre, from what language does the word klizma, enema, originate?
Of course, from Russian.
And Ms. Salome, who is considered Europe's queen and Europe's chosen figure, and whom many still regard as president, why does she use the word klizma? Does she not know that there is a Georgian word for it?
Of course there is.
Or maybe she uses klizma, but not the Georgian equivalent.
Excuse me, now people will probably say such a comment is inappropriate aside from the humor.
This attitude toward a day on which nearly 2 million Georgian citizens came out and identified themselves with the values of family unity and respect for parents says a lot. This day was established by His Holiness and Beatitude on May 17th, 2013.
Yes, these people exist, and what dominates here, because I studied this, I was interested in it, and even published several articles about it, is private and personal interest, including financial interest. There are people and groups in Georgia. NGO-cracy. As you know, this term was introduced by an excellent scholar from Chatham House who studied the situation in Georgia and called this phenomenon NGO-cracy, because there are non-governmental organizations that receive grants and are then obligated to fulfill whatever is written in those grants. And in those grants it may be written that there must be a parade, a pride march, a gathering of pride groups, that several so-called coming outs must take place. That is, public declarations where a person comes out and, with all the tragedy and drama, declares that they have a non-traditional sexual orientation, that they are homosexual, and that until now they could not say it, were ashamed, embarrassed, had a complex, but now have gathered the courage to say it publicly. So why should a person want to publicly announce that they are, for example, a normal, ordinary man, or that they have some other orientation? None of us has ever felt the need to publicly declare, I am a normal man. Georgia had and still has genuine tolerance. I want to begin by saying that these grants and related programs do not, in any way, help protect the rights of homosexuals or minorities in Georgia. On the contrary, I have seen solid research, for example, from the Heinrich Böll Foundation, which clearly shows that society's tolerant attitude toward them is being replaced by irritation rather than protection. This is evident. But there are people, especially those closely connected with Western structures, whether journalists, members of the European Parliament, or others, because in the West, over recent years, this issue has truly acquired an almost sacred status. I would like to remind you that years ago, nearly 20 years ago, the European Parliament was discussing the approval of a new composition of European commissioners. Every member state of the European Union is allocated one portfolio. Today there are 27 countries and therefore 27 portfolios, including the chairmanship. When the United Kingdom was a member, there were 28. Italy nominated a famous European public figure and scholar, Rocco Buttiglione, the author of an excellent book about Pope John Paul II. He was nominated for the position of commissioner. His credentials were ideal, but in the European Parliament he was asked, in one of your articles, it appears that you do not support same-sex marriage. What is your position? This man calmly, firmly, and with dignity replied, I am a believer, a Christian, and a Catholic. For me, this is unacceptable. His candidacy was immediately rejected. Because of this, the entire cabinet had to be reassembled from scratch, since the cabinet is approved collectively. Do you know what is important here? Vetting and ideological screening.
Certification.
Yes, vetting. And in Ukraine, I want to tell everyone this interesting fact. It was carried out under Adeishvili's leadership. Adeishvili was the person overseeing it, and today he is also involved with Interpol-related work in Ukraine. That is how this kind of system was created.
Did Adeishvili personally examine them?
He organized the entire process. He himself determined what kind of ideology and worldview a judge should have. And now they already know that out of 100 candidates, only those will pass who already know how to answer such questions in the correct way.
So when Mikhail Saakashvili carried out judicial reform, was it done for this purpose?
Of course. The purpose of Saakashvili's judicial reform was precisely to establish control, and that goal was achieved very quickly. When Saakashvili became president, the prosecutor's office established total control over the courts. I know this field well, and I can tell you that Zurab Adeishvili, whether he was prosecutor general, chief prosecutor, or minister of justice, never personally called the chairman of the Supreme Court. He had deputies for that, and they would directly tell courts, this verdict must be issued in this case, that verdict in that case. And there was no reconsideration. You probably remember the case when a journalist, Ms. Paicadze, found a man who had supposedly been murdered while another man was sitting in prison for his murder. It turned out the dead man had simply been living in a village all along. They brought him in as living proof, and still the case was not reconsidered.
On May 17th, Patriarchal Locum Tenens Shio conducted a religious service attended by delegations from various Orthodox churches around the world, and he delivered a very emotional, powerful, and remarkable speech. It left an unforgettable impression on me. He said that a family that undergoes abortion cannot be blessed by God. This was followed by a very aggressive reaction from many sides. Almost everyone attacked Shio III with the same narrative, saying that he was fueling ethnic and religious divisions among Georgian citizens. Essentially, they accused him of inciting hostility between different groups. What do you think about this?
This is absurd, because if the existence of our mother church, the Georgian Orthodox Church, and His Holiness Catholicos Patriarch Shio III, is already considered an act of incitement, then according to that logic, the church itself should not exist at all. He said something very correct and very powerful, and I would add this. For a believing person, if they are truly a believer, abortion is murder. There are no two opinions about this, except in cases where doctors determine it is medically necessary, for example, to save the woman's life, or when severe fetal pathology is known in advance. Aside from such cases, for a believer, this is the killing of a human being, nothing more and nothing less. I know families who follow this principle very strictly, because for them, killing that small being is exactly the same as killing a person. This has been said many times, written many times, and for believers it is a fact. And if a believer still does this, they know they have committed murder.
Of course.
And then what happens in such a family? Maybe outwardly nothing changes, but cognitive dissonance inevitably appears when you believe one thing and do another. And this is often destructive. But Bishop Shio said one more very important thing, something completely unacceptable for many people. He said that if the demographic situation in Georgia does not improve, we must accept the fact that Georgians may soon become a minority in their own country. Other peoples will appear, and Georgians will become a minority in this beautiful country of ours. And saying such a thing is already unacceptable for people who live according to the ideology of multiculturalism or are dependent on grants. What difference does ethnicity make, they say? I want to tell you that years ago, at the university where my colleague, an excellent scholar, worked, professors were discussing the fact that birth rates among Georgians had decreased, while among newborns there was an increasing proportion of children from other ethnic groups. You can see it from names and surnames. Official studies are not openly published on this, but people see it and discuss it. We all know what is happening.